What's one thing that a virtual assistant can do to take something off a business owner's plate today?
What we find, a lot of leaders, a lot of owners, probably us in general, we put too much on our plate. We know too much. We do too much. And so where we work with business owners and leaders is how to alleviate some of the administrative burden, the things that aren't the best use of your time. It's often the things that somebody says, I wish I didn't have to do this. That's a good indicator, whatever comes next, that you can find a virtual assistant to do that thing.
Well, we're going to learn more about how a virtual assistant can help somebody's business on the Loan Doctor podcast. I'm Rich Brandt, the Loan Doctor with the Brandt Lending Team at Northpointe Bank, and I'm with my guest, David Rush, who owns a virtual staffing company. What's the name of your staffing company?
The virtual staffing company is called Access Virtual Staffing, and I am the Vice President of Sales.
All right, David. All right, so we're going to get into some really, really good questions about virtual staffing. For someone who's never used virtual staff before, what's the simplest way to explain what your company does?
We find incredible talent overseas. That could be in Philippines, that could be in Latin America, and that talent then gets brought into your business to do the things that are most important for your business that your leaders ideally are not doing. It's the lower hanging fruit inside the business in terms of administrative burden, but it's also a whole bunch of other skill sets. And so we're finding people who have years and years of experience, not only in your industry, but in the unique skill set that you're looking for.
Now, we don't often get political on this show, but you kind of said you do them from overseas. What's the advantage of doing this with people overseas as opposed to people in the U.S.?
There's a couple of things. One is price. So The average price point that we often have for our clients is, let's say, $10 an hour. So $10 an hour of somebody who has years of experience in the particular skill set and plugging into your business. A simple example is somebody needed someone to help their HR department and their head of HR. That person came in, and this business did not have a HR employee handbook. For years, within a week, this virtual assistant who had prior experience had a beautiful employee handbook, and it ended up, this is not our intention, but in this particular case, the head of HR, it was discovered that within the business was not doing very much or what was expected. So actually bringing in a virtual assistant shed a light and said, and this is what often happens in businesses, is we're not optimized the way we could. And so let's optimize.
All right, interesting. Very, very interesting. What's one of the biggest misconceptions that people have about hiring somebody virtually?
I think a misconception is, one with the Philippines is, how does the time differential work? And the reality is, because it's a 12-hour time difference, they actually are used to and like working Eastern Standard hours, working at night. They call it the graveyard shift, but one, it's quieter at night, so they have a lot more time to focus. Two, their kids get up in the morning, so they take their kids to school, and then they sleep during the day. And so it's actually become a part of their culture. So it's not a burden on them. They're happy to do it. And so the misconception is they might not want to be working these hours or working in this business. And the reality is they love the opportunity, they love the business. And when they come into the business, they are committed, dedicated, and they want to be with you for life if it's the right situation.
Right. I think we should, full transparency, let people know we have a dog in the studio.
Yes.
Maybe you want to call her?
Brickley, you want to come say hi to everybody?
Yeah.
Here, buddy. Yeah.
All right. If you heard that sound.
This is Brickley Moses. He's a sidekick and inspiration in many ways.
There you go, the mascot. I know that a lot of people, here on the Loan Doctor podcast, even though I do residential lending, most of my clients are self-employed. And so giving them ideas on how to maximize the efficiencies of their business or help grow their business is going to be really, really invaluable. So I appreciate us being able to share this, your information. Is there anything as a business that's too small for virtual staffing?
Not too small. We tend to guide people away from what I call part-time, so less than 30 hours a week. The reason being, unless it's project-oriented, these virtual assistants are looking for full-time employment. So if you're only giving them part-time, that means they're working likely part-time for someone else, or they're searching for another opportunity. And when they find it, now if it's a full-time opportunity, they're likely to go to that opportunity. What happens to the business owner is they put in time, energy, and money for this virtual assistant only to have them leave. So our encouragement is, because it's not, the price point isn't that high, if you have the budget for it. And what happens over time with a virtual assistant is, even though you hire them for one specific thing, like let's say managing email and calendar, all of a sudden there's someone who's good at social media. So you start to find the gaps that they can fill, and you can easily find full-time work at the price point.
Now, so you were mentioned 30 hours. Is full-time 30 hours or more?
We just have that as our range. Like for full-time qualification in terms of our business, it's above the 30-hour threshold, but we recommend 40 hours. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. And no benefits. It's just the pay and that's it.
Well, embedded in our service, especially in the Philippines, we offer something called PhilHealth, which is an emergency health care provider. So it actually gives them that benefit. We also offer Social Security benefits in the Philippines for our Filipino VAs. So in addition, for our business, like one of the differentiators is, one, we handle time monitoring. So there's a time doctor system where their screens are monitored, their hours are monitored, and that translates into our invoicing platform. Okay. But on the other side, we're very supportive culturally, certainly on the Filipino side and on the Latin American side, to make sure that we're doing as much as we can to honor their culture, to make sure they're taken care of, to provide benefits where they're available. And that's not an additional cost to our clients. It's part of the overall hourly price point.
All right, nice. I mean, I like that. I like that it's culturally not only giving them jobs, but helping them in other ways is a really good thing.
Yeah. And here's the cool thing.
Okay.
Just a side note to that is, even though they're beneficial to your business, one of the great things that I've experienced personally, but also our clients have experienced, you build a relationship with them, but you're also taking care of them, their livelihood, their family, putting food on the table. Like, there's an intangible benefit, even though the work they're doing is really good. It's the relationship and the impact you're actually having on another person's life in another country. Sometimes that can touch people in some really cool ways. We have one of our clients sent a new PlayStation to his VA family in the Philippines, and the kids got that as a present for the holidays to play PlayStation, because he just loved the work that she was doing for them and wanted to help out the family.
I think anytime you can connect, you can develop a relationship as opposed to just a transaction, right? Like, it could be a transaction in my business. I could have a transaction, but it's much more fruitful if we have a relationship, if I kind of better understand what their needs are and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you bringing that same element to the virtual staffing forum.
Yeah.
So what do you do different than somebody hiring, let's say, like a freelancer or going to the marketplace?
I think, one, we have a really strong vetting process. So we have a recruiting team in the Philippines. And so even before that happens, to dial it a step back, when I consult with a business owner or somebody who's looking to hire, I get really clear on their needs, whether it's the experience they need, the technology platforms they need. Everything is very dialed in terms of our role description. So that eliminates having to go out and look at other platforms to figure out who fits that role, or do the people applying fit the role. We then send that to our recruiting team. The recruiting team then finds a whole bunch of candidates across all the platforms that we have access to, and then they do 2 levels of interviews. So there's an initial screening interview, and then the ones that pass that get passed along to our head of recruiting, who does the final interviews. And so if you're doing it yourself, one, you have to know culture, you have to know all these different nuances, the right questions to ask to poke holes in the resumes that aren't always 100% up to snuff. So by the time we send you candidates, the top 3 or 4 candidates that we find, you're getting people who have passed a lot of our internal systems and tests and filters. So you know, for the most part, that you're getting high quality, verified, validated candidates that fit specifically the role that you're looking for.
Okay. And what's the in your business, do you find that from the sales side of your business, are people coming to you because they're like, "Oh, I need a virtual assistant," or are you kind of outreaching and letting people know, "Hey, this is how your business would change if you had a virtual assistant"?
It's a combination of the two. Some people might say to a friend who uses us, or just in general, I need a virtual assistant. So sometimes there's the inbound where people are clear, I need help, I need support, I want to learn more about virtual staffing. On the other hand, I often talk to a lot of business owners, and the reality, as one of my initial comments today, is we all are probably doing tasks that are $10 an hour tasks that aren't the best use of our time. So a lot of times, I have a platform where I consult with business owners called Reclaim Your Time. And if we really did a time audit and diagnostic of most people's time, there's a lot of things in our lives, let alone our businesses, that aren't the best use of our time. We just haven't optimized it. We haven't realized that we can delegate it. And when that gets uncovered, we can find a ton of room to delegate administrative tasks or other pieces of the business where a virtual assistant for, I'm using the example of $10 an hour, can come in and really make an impact. So a lot of it's uncovering the bottlenecks, uncovering where there's a lot of burdens within people's roles or within their businesses, and figuring out, oh, somebody else could do that, and it's not going to cost you a lot.
Yeah, I definitely do too many $10 an hour activities. I think that I'm actually in the middle of reading a book, Buy Back Your Time.
Ooh, yeah, Dan Martell.
Dan Martell, right, exactly right. Give him a plug.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Dan, if you're listening, there are sponsorship opportunities available. But it sounds kind of fascinating, because the trick is that if we can, the more we focus on things that produce income, the better our business is going to be. And too often, too many people are focusing on working in their business instead of on it. And This would be a relatively inexpensive way to shift the in your business stuff so that you could work on your business as a business owner.
Yeah. And one of the quotes that I often take from that book and from Dan, he says, 80% done by someone else is 100% awesome. And a lot of what Dan speaks to and I speak to is learning what's your strength. Actually, Josh Blum, who I know we're connected to, he talks about that too. Like, as a leader, as a business owner, we need to say, what are our strengths? What's our zone of genius? And that's where we should be operating most of our time. And if we're doing things outside of that zone and outside of like where we really thrive, one, it's not the best use of our time, but two, it actually weighs us down. So by alleviating this other stuff, it allows you to operate where you're most masterful in more often. Your energy levels go up. You feel a lot more fulfilled in what you're doing. You feel a lot less burdened by all this other stuff. And so that's the value too. It's almost like you get a better quality of life, a better quality of business when you learn to delegate. And that's another topic we can talk about, because that is challenging for a lot of leaders.
We might have to talk about that, because I've never shared this like in a public forum. I remember learning that there's this, like, I think the term that was used for me when I learned this concept was the triad of awesomeness. But you have what am I good at? What do I like to do? And what do I do that makes me the most money? Right? And so if you put in those, if you have those three circles where they overlap, as the business owner, you should be doing the thing that's in the center, that where all three of those things meet. And in my business, that's probably my biggest struggle, is the things that I'm good at and the things that I like doing are not the things that generally produce revenue. Even though I produce some pretty good revenue.
Yeah.
But that part takes work and effort. The other part, the talking to borrowers and going through a loan plan and doing all that part's easy. That part I love doing. But in the grand scheme of things, if you want the phone to ring, you have to do other activities too. So I'm curious to talk about to explore that more.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah,
on
I'll
a different episode.
Well, I can share just a brief instance, and this is what I find a lot when I work with a lot of leaders and business owners is when you hire a virtual assistant, you actually have to transfer the responsibility to them. And if that's not a position you've already had documented or a position you've already had inside your business, now one, you have to look at your processes. Do you have standard operating procedures well documented out so that they can be followed by another person? And that's something Dan Martell would say, or an Alex Hormozy would say, make systems within your business that are so crystal clear and foolproof. You can bring somebody in, they can follow that thing, and it gets done at a very high level. The challenge for most leaders and business owners is it's all up here, and it's hard to get it out of their head if they've always done it and hand it over to somebody. Not only hand it over to somebody, have a process and a system that monitors it and also corrects it at the outset. Because if you're really good at training somebody and putting them in a role and making sure they're doing exactly how you want it done, that you know is successful, now you set yourself up to win. But what I also find is a lot of leaders, myself included, like it's hard sometimes to train another on the thing that you're really good at.
Yeah, it's funny. I have a team of 8 people, and it's hard taking the information that's here and putting it somewhere else, which kind of leads me to my next question. Walk us through the vetting process, what that actually looks like when you onboard like a client or when a client's thinking about coming on.
In terms of like, is it a good client for us, or
Well,
are they a good client for virtual staffing?
a good client, are they a good client for virtual staffing? But how do they onboard?
Okay, like how do they've selected their virtual assistant and now they're getting onto the
Yeah,
platform.
and in fact, I think I'd like to touch on kind of all 3 areas. What makes a good client?
Yep.
So let's start with that one.
I think a great client, like if you really want the ideal scenario for the onboarding or for a client who's ready, is what we just touched on is, one, they've got good systems and processes in place. 2, they're great at delegating and being ready and prepared to onboard a virtual assistant. I think they're really clear on what kind of virtual assistant they want and where they're going to fit into their business. So if all of those things are set up, then when it's time to onboard the virtual assistant, the process is clear. They know exactly what this person is coming in to do. So now you're taking, similar to our zone of genius conversation, the VA has a zone of genius. You created a job description that should fit their zone of genius, like what you need. Hopefully we've found that person. Now they plug into that particular area, and if there's a system, process, and all around it, that's a recipe for success. If some of those things are missing, now we're putting a real burden on the whole VA, the process, the system, because that's one of the misconceptions too, is I get a VA and they can go figure it out. That is a recipe for disaster. A lot of people are like, I just wish they would knew what to do.
Right.
Well, you didn't teach them, you didn't train them, you didn't put them in a good track so that they were set up for success in their zone of genius.
So when you were going through kind of that description, it kind of reminded me of something that we do from the mortgage standpoint is sometimes people come to us who are not mortgage ready, right? An ideal client would be somebody who's, got W-2 income, who is unlimited savings and just wants a mortgage, right? Obviously, and great credit and all that. But not everybody comes to us like that. Some people come to us who are not mortgage ready. And one of the things that we do, whether it's credit, savings, whatever, we kind of give them that mortgage roadmap so that we take them from being not mortgage ready to mortgage ready over a period of time. From the virtual staffing standpoint, if you have a client who needs those things that you mentioned to be a good client, do you have a way to help them get there?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Oh. So I come from a business coaching executive.
I thought you were going to say no.
Leadership.
That's awesome.
Well, I think part of it is, I'm not like patting myself on the back as an individual, but I think that's one of the things that we do really well. And certainly in terms of me working with clients is I come from an executive leadership background, a coaching background. And so I've worked with a lot of leaders and business owners on a number of different fronts. So when I am consulting with a leader or a business owner, I'm asking the questions to uncover the things that I know they need. And if upfront it's, I don't have any systems or processes in place, okay, let's talk about that. Because this day and age, there's almost no excuse, because you can put a prompt in ChatGPT and within 30 seconds, you can actually have a system and process that could be followed. Now, you might need to fine tune that. You might need to dial it in. I'm not oversimplifying it, but that would be what I would say is like, simple question. Do you have a system and process in place for this particular role and function? Is it clearly defined? If not, prior to onboarding, that would be a good idea. Do you have time and energy when you are going to onboard the VA to sit down with them and walk through in a patient way the system and process to ensure that they're very clear on what you want them to do, how you want them to do it, and how the game plan is going to be moving forward? And if the answers to those questions are no, then we need to talk about that and make sure that we can put that in place so that we're creating a recipe. Like, you wouldn't bake a cake without some of the proper ingredients. Similarly, you wouldn't onboard a virtual assistant unless you have the right systems and things in place for success. Because now it's like a waste of your time, it's a waste of their time, and a month later you're going to be dissatisfied. And this is a thing. People will hire a virtual assistant, and I've heard this, whether they've done it on their own or they've done it through an agency, and say, it doesn't work. Like, I had these struggles. But then when I ask some questions about the things I just talked about, oh yeah, we didn't have that in place. Oh, we didn't have that in place. So that's a reason why you might have dissatisfaction at the onset if you didn't do some of these things up front.
Well, I think it's funny because there are so many like systems and vehicles that you have that where the system doesn't work. I know I'll kind of speak for me in this. I can't believe I'm being so vulnerable. But a lot of times, like I'll sign up, register for a program that I think is going to work, and then it doesn't work. But the bottleneck isn't the program; the bottleneck is me. How do you get somebody to change their behavior so that you have a successful outcome?
A quick side note on what you just said.
Yeah.
So I mentioned Alex Hormozy. He's just great with marketing, business development, and all these things. One of the things, I was listening to something he said one time, and he said, I have never not gotten positive ROI on any program that I've signed up for, because I know if I do the program as it's designed, one, it's going to work. And if it doesn't, I'm going to figure out how to make it work and make it work for me. And he said, I've had so many people who have designed programs come to me, and like, I've used them to skyrocket my business. And they're like, you are the best student that we've ever had. And so that's part of it too, is taking the responsibility of, I'm going to figure out how to make this work because I saw that guy made it work. I know that it can work, but I'm going to actually do it the way it's designed. Now that's what often happens in any training or anything, is we like sign up for it, we do half of it, and then down the road it's like, it didn't work. Well, did you allocate the time? Did you do it as designed? And if not, then we might have an answer for why these things. So similarly, working with any client, if they're going to buy a service, sometimes I'll say that up front. I was like, are you really committed to this? Especially if I'm sensing that it's kind of like I'm just trying to plug a hole last minute, and their attention span is not there. They're pulled in so many different directions. If you really want this to work, and you don't want that to, because this is the interesting thing. We as humans, even though we're finding a solution, we also have certain tendencies where we tend to overwhelm ourselves. We tend to be unavailable. We tend to be, because we just take on more and more and more stuff.
Yep.
And so that's the challenge too. It's like, let's be honest. Is this really something you're going to give time, energy, and focus to? Because I want this to work for you, but we need to be clear that you're going to set it up so that it can work for you. Yeah.
Well, I think
that was a lot. Hopefully that was
clear.
No,
it was good. I think one of the things that helps me in certain aspects, and I don't know, I would imagine that I'm probably like other people, is that like almost like tell me what to do, break it down, I'll just follow the steps. Like if I my whole job is to think big picture. That's what I do all the time. And if I have to do something that's a task and not conceptualize, it's very hard for me to. Then I've got to think, okay, what do I have to do, and all that stuff. If you make it so, if it's done in a way where I don't have to use my brain, like going to the gym. If you go work out with a trainer, lift this, lift that. I don't have to think what kind of exercise do I want to do, what muscle part. I'm just a mindless robot, and it works for me because I do those tasks that I wouldn't necessarily do if somebody wasn't in my face saying, "Hey, get that done."
Yeah. And I mean, you speak,
And that's as the business owner.
yeah, and you speak to something that's, I think, just something I've seen over the course of my life working on myself, but also working with a lot of leaders and founders, is it's important to have good guidance around you, whether you've signed up for a program, whether you've signed up with a coach, whatever it is. Like, so similarly, like, don't go try to figure out how to put a mortgage together yourself. Go to the expert who's going to help walk you through the process, who has been there. And it's like, send me your stuff and I'll figure it out for you. Here's the prices, here are your options, here's the best thing. Make your own decision, but I've armed you with everything that's valuable for this decision. Similarly, I think we as leaders sometimes try to say, oh, I can figure it out, but that, getting back to what weighs us down and burdens us versus what allows us to flourish in the areas where we want to just be in our zone, sometimes we got to be a little bit more diligent with where are those boundaries.
Yeah, no, saying no.
Yeah, saying no, 100%.
Yeah, definitely. It's yeah, no, it's funny just talking about that sort of that mortgage space, and so many times people come to me with what they want, and what they need are not the same because they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they have like this direction that says, I want to do this, I want to do this. I had a lady the other day, they went to contract, and she's like, I want an FHA loan. You know, you got to write the pre-approval like an FHA. I'm like, well, you don't need it, but an FHA loan isn't good. The rate's going to be higher. You're going to be tied into mortgage insurance. You're going to have upfront MIP, and your mortgage insurance is going to be higher because your credit is really, really good. Why do you want FHA? Well, because my neighbor told me that they got an FHA. Like, yeah, but your neighbor's situation is different than yours. Here's why. And so, but once you kind of break it down and everything like that, it kind of made sense.
That's a funny thing about life is we hear something, somebody reputable tells us it's a good thing, and then we say, oh, I got to go do that exact thing. And the reality is it's not one size fits all. It may be a really good thing for you, but also don't lock in that like that's the only way. There's other ways to do it, and sometimes it needs to be custom designed for whatever your life and business situation is.
I think a borrower's financial picture is like a snowflake. So there's always going to be some nuance that's different that you're not getting when you're asking your neighbor or your friend or somebody who just gives you unsolicited advice that they're not going to be familiar with. And the same thing with business, right? Everybody's business, there are no two businesses that might be extremely similar, but there are no two businesses that are exactly similar.
Yep.
And so different if-then moments might cause a shift to go from, well, the reason that worked for him is because this isn't happening. But in your business, this little thing is happening, and that changes how, this works or that works. Yeah. So what roles are businesses hiring for the most right now?
I think the most general is, you could call it administrative or executive assistant. So that's someone who's highly skilled at managing a lot of internal admin. That could be your emails, your email inboxes, your calendars, your follow-ups, like all the different back and forth that takes a lot. Like, ask yourself, how many hours a day am I spending in my inboxes? And I use the word inboxes because most of us have a lot more inboxes than we're really aware of. You might have multiple email inboxes. You might have a bunch of social media inboxes. You might have a phone inbox, a message inbox. So now when you start thinking about that, how much time each day are you spending in messaging and communication, where if that majority of that time was handled for you, that would alleviate a lot of time that would then allow you to focus on what we might call IPAs, income producing activities, which are a lot better use of your time. So that's one of the core elements, is as administrative. But we also find, hey, we want to have a social media presence, but I don't have time to be on LinkedIn all day long. But it would be valuable to have a system and a process set up. So personally and for other business owners, I have a virtual assistant who manages my LinkedIn, my content, my follow-up, my DMs, all the different things in a very specific system that I've custom designed that I know is workable and working. So now I've got somebody doing that, so I don't have to spend 2-3 hours a day or more. I have that on my X platform. A lot of people will outsource their social media, their
X.
follow-ups.
Oh,
Yep.
X Twitter.
X is formerly known as
So
Twitter.
okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
yeah.
All right. Sorry,
So
I'm old.
yeah, so I'm playing around with a lot of that, but that's another case. It's like, where do you spend a lot of time? Video editing. I just bought a new truck, but at the auto dealership, Dimitri, who is the owner of the auto dealership, who I showed one of my YouTube videos, he said, "Oh, I do YouTube too." And I said, "Yeah, look, Harold just did this video for me," and I show him the edited video that Harold did for me. And he said, "Oh man, I spend so much time. Like I don't have all my videos out because I got to sit down and edit them." And I said, "Well, you could find somebody to edit your video content for you, and then all you have to do is they could even post it for you. So now those 2 hours, 3 hours a day, week, whatever it is that you're spending editing videos, that's no longer on your plate. So now you've got more mental bandwidth, time bandwidth, whether it's to work on the business or just let yourself breathe a little bit and spend time with family and friends." Yeah.
So, what does the actual teaching process look like? We kind of touched on it a little bit. For those first couple of weeks, to the training for the onboard assistant, so that they understand what's going on and what they need to do.
Well, we don't do a ton of, let's say, upfront training. We onboard them onto our systems and platforms. What I often say is these are virtual assistants who have operated in this role or capacity before for other businesses. So they should have the right skill sets and abilities to transfer into your system. So the onboarding is in many ways a very simple handoff. Is the onboarding at the client's side really well built out so that they are giving time and energy in the first days and weeks to make sure that they're getting into the system and the process. It's being monitored, it's being followed up with. So on our side, it's a very simple handoff, but it's also, we're there if you're having trouble or guidance in the first couple of weeks. I mean, we're there forever, but in the first couple of weeks to say, all right, let's talk about where the bumps are. How might you adjust some of how you're engaging with the virtual assistant to make sure that the relationship is good, that the communication is good. I also recommend an end of day email from the virtual assistant saying, this is what I've done. This is what my priorities are tomorrow. These are the challenges I face. So you can read a simple summary email in your inbox, whether it's at the end of the day or in the beginning of the day when you start your day, and say, oh, this is what they did. I thought this would have been done a little faster. Let me take a look at that. This is where they had a challenge. Let me see if I can support them in that. So now you're creating the recipe for success for the whole thing.
What about now? You mentioned like them because this is international. So for them to post on your social media, are you giving them access to your like passwords and all that kind of stuff? And what do you do to kind of keep that secure, if anything?
Yeah, no, they have full access to all the platforms. If it is sometimes just the way that you can adjust if it is a international or a flagging scenario. Obviously, systems called like VPNs where they can log into a system that's U.S. based and then access channels through a U.S. IP address. There's ways to have it be as you are from the U.S. capacity. Yeah.
God, have you ever had have you ever, as far as you know, from the virtual staffing side, has there been like a breach where like a bad actor got into somebody's thing because of the VPN thing, or not the VPN, but just this international thing?
In terms of like hacking into the security because something was open.
If I'm giving somebody access to something like my company computers or something like that, has that been an issue or not something that's come up?
Certainly not an issue. Our founder, he owns a home and auto insurance business for the past 30 years. He's been using virtual assistants for the past 10. And right now we've got over 65 virtual assistants that support this particular home and auto insurance business. We've had people that have been there for 10 years. And in terms of, and there's a lot of sensitive information that's within our entire business that virtual assistants have their hands on. But I think back to talking about culture and the vetting process, we tend to weed out. Is anything foolproof? No, 100% not. But we tend to weed out a lot of the folks based on resume, based on interview, based on a lot of different criteria that eliminates a lot of the risk in terms of a bad actor coming into your business and being able to like stay around until it's time for them to be a bad actor.
I wasn't really thinking about the person being hired as the bad actor. I was thinking more along this lines of somebody being able to get in who isn't connected to necessarily that person.
Like almost just like a data breach.
Almost like a data breach from a hacker because of this separation.
Have not heard. I mean, nothing directly inside of our clients and our business at this point, but we've heard some. I mean, in general, we've heard some horror stories about what hackers can do. So I don't think it.
No more, no less than any other business.
Less than if you're using any other, I'd say, technology platform.
Now, I know I sometimes our listeners might be saying, or I hear, like, I don't have time to train somebody to be my virtual assistant. What do you say to that person?
I'd say it's like, what's the opportunity cost of you not training them or not spending the time up front? Because if your real problem is, I don't have enough time to do all of this other stuff, and how much, if we said, what's the impact of that over the course of a year, I think the upfront sacrifice to make it work in the first couple of weeks so that the long term, that this VA is with you for a year and alleviates a significant more than that upfront time spend, is you just have to, and that's what like, are you committed? Like, do you really, if I use the phrase that I've often used, do you really want to reclaim your time? Do you really want to alleviate that administrative burden or business burden? Because if the answer is yes, then let's figure out how to make that sacrifice up front so that over the course of a year, the value of that far outweighs the I don't have time for this right now.
Now, we talked earlier on the show about the time zone difference and how it's for the people in the Philippines, it's good. Does that, because they're working on East Coast time, does that time zone impact the business or the consumer here?
No, I mean, I don't think so. It's really, you get to determine if you want someone, and this is how some businesses operate too. I've heard this from a tech standpoint. They have teams that operate on 8-hour increments where team A during U.S. business hours works on the project. When they're done, they hand it off to team B, which is the next 8-hour shift, which is the next 8-hour shift. Now, if you're a U.S. business owner, you wake up and you go back into your business, and now 2 additional 8 hours of work have been done on the project by the other team. So now you're not just getting an 8-hour work day for this project, you're getting 3 8-hour work days every day from different teams. So you could have an overnight shift and have the VA working on a project so that while you're sleeping, the thing is moving forward. You wake up, you see what progress has been made, and then you tap back into it. So there's all different ways that you can structure. You just say, this is when I want somebody working, and then we go and find the person who has that skill set and will work at that time frame.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. Now, how much of the business owner's own time should they realistically expect to invest before a VA is fully productive?
I think a lot of that goes back to what we've talked about a little bit or a lot of it here is, do you have good systems, processes in place? Because sometimes if you have a really good document that outlines all the steps and somebody can read that and start to use it to do all the things, that can eliminate a lot of your time. But if you have to design the process with them, if you have to walk them through it, now that's going to take a different burden. So there's no, this is the answer. The answer is, it's a lot less time if you're able to, or you get help building the system and process so that they just plug right into it.
Okay. Which is kind of like leads me into the next question I have, like about red flags. Like what's the red flag that this might not work or it isn't working, and how early can you spot it? But it's really in the beginning. If you don't have a good systems and process, it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, and that's what we see a lot of times with, I'd say, clients that don't work out. And sometimes we're not perfect. Like, we don't always it's just a fun, very unique example. But the interview, I saw this VA like off the charts, thought this was going to be a like home run rock star VA, and day one, like not in professional attire, eating during a team meeting, and you're like, who is this person? That person is not the person that was in all the interviews. That's not the, and you're, so sometimes that's like a unicorn in the whole like we don't often see that, but sometimes that happens. So it's, and this is where I think we alleviate a lot of that is early on, if you are monitoring and inspecting the activity, you'll see some of those indications within a day or two or three. And then it's like, hey, we either need to dial this in and figure out if, can this person do it? Is it the right fit? And if not, what we do is we'll go find more candidates. So if you've already onboarded them, it's a problem, but they're still doing good work for you, keep them on, interview for the other candidates. And then just like is U.S. employment, it's like, I'm not going to open a giant gap in my business. I'm going to prepare for it. And then when it's time to transition, you've got the right person set up for the next step.
What tools or systems do most of your successful clients use day to day?
I think it varies depending on the business. I'd say, there's all different CRM platforms. So I wouldn't say this one's better than that one, but they usually have a CRM platform, whether it's Go High Level or it's HubSpot or it's there's all different kinds of systems and platforms. I think project management platforms are valuable, whether it's Monday or Asana, or you can go down a list of different project management platforms, but it varies per business. There's a lot of like specific legal CRM programs or specific construction or specific this. So I don't know if there's one that I would say or two that I would say these are the platforms you should be using, but I think you should be using platforms to help
something.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned before about like monitoring and stuff like that. So when somebody is onboarding the VA, is the business monitoring their production? Are you guys monitoring their production? Is it a combination of both?
So we're not monitoring work effectiveness. Like we can't monitor their actual work. What we monitor is one, number of hours logged, and two, screen time. So our system, they log into our system, which is called Time Doctor. So it's monitoring their screens. And so if a VA is messing around and watching a YouTube video, that will show up. Sometimes that's okay if they're supposed to be watching a YouTube video and learning something, but if they're not doing work and that's what's happening, we have a team internally that's going to look at that, flag it, and then we communicate that to the client and then determine how they want to deal with it.
We talked earlier about like a little bit about pricing, but how does pricing for a VA usually compare to the same staff person in the U.S.?
Well, some quick math. If you do full time, $10 an hour, $400 a week, times 4, $1,600 a month, times 12. What is that? 16,000 plus 2,800. So now you're at 19,000 for the year for a full time employee.
Right.
And then you look at whatever minimum wage is, and so think about that.
Or even minimum wage, who are you getting at minimum wage?
You're getting someone with very limited experience versus a VA who has years and sometimes 10 plus years of expertise and experience in the given area of expertise. And as an example, we have a law firm who hired a VA who had a law degree from the Philippines, who is now doing a lot of the back-end contract setups once the front-end attorney has consulted with the client and say, hey, we need to put this estate planning contract in place. So that's even entry-level out of law school, that's a $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 a year employee.
Right. So the real benefit is if you're going to get a comparable rate in the U.S., right, you're going to get an unskilled laborer, but if you're going to get somebody who's got the technical expertise that the VA is going to have, you would be paying a lot more in the U.S. than what it's going to cost.
It's often a 70% or more cost reduction. Our home and auto insurance business saves over we did the math at the kind of minimum wage level, over $1 to $2 million annually in savings. So that's what's available. And it's a valuable resource for anyone, and it's kind of back to our original comment. I won't say it that way, but one of our friends said, you'd have to be an idiot not to have a virtual assistant at this point.
Right. What's one of the biggest mistakes that business owners make, like say the first 30 days?
I think it's a lot of what we've said earlier. It's what are you really measuring and monitoring and inspecting what's being done? Because when you do, like a lot of times, I think another thing that comes up often is I just hope they figure it out. Unless you know they're capable of figuring it out, but chances are they're not at the level of expertise that we often feel we're at and they could be at. Mm-hmm. You have to be there. You have to be a guide. You have to be a mentor. You have to be a leader who can delegate effectively. And that's we said that's a challenging skill for somebody who's often just done it all themselves
before, right?
Yeah.
So now, a lot of people that are listening are self-employed, real estate agents, loan officers, contractors. What roles make the most sense for them in terms of like thinking about getting a VA?
I think I'll use a real estate agent as an example, but it's all transferable. One, social media management, like that's something we're putting out a lot of, but that could also be like Zillow, like creating the Zillow accounts, taking the photos, putting it up, polishing it. Like somebody can do that for you in any kind of capacity with pictures, with messaging, with all different kinds of platforms. Somebody can do that for you. Transaction coordinators. So a lot of real estate agents have transaction coordinators that manage the transaction process, follow up with the client, follow up with this, follow up with that. There are highly skilled virtual assistants who have past experience in real estate with transaction coordination who can do that at a very high level. And a lot of real estate agents are currently accessing them to do that. So if you're doing that all yourself, that would be something as well. So
I think for me, that actually might be something that I might want to do because I know a lot of real estate agents might not have the bandwidth or the pipeline to support somebody for 30 hours a week. But I might want to do something where I bring in a transaction coordinator for the real estate transactions for my realtors. So that essentially I'm giving them a transaction coordinator to make their job a little bit easier as we go through the process. And they don't have to hire somebody, number one. They don't have to train somebody, number two. But they also don't have to. It's not somebody who's going to only be working 5 hours because they're going to be doing a lot of transactions because they're doing them for me.
Yep.
All right.
And that's what
we're going to talk about that before we leave.
100%. And that's what we often find. This is I think I briefly mentioned it earlier, but a lot of times when you hire a VA for a specific thing, when you start to say, oh, well, I could ask them to do this, I could ask them to do this, all of a sudden the world, our founder sometimes says it's like crack cocaine. It's like you can't get enough once you realize the value a virtual assistant could bring to your business. And you're like, I want to plug one in here. I want to plug one in here. I want to plug one in here. And now all of a sudden you've alleviated a lot of the stuff that was holding you back or your clients back, and you're supporting the real estate agent or whoever it is. And it's a fraction of the cost. Yeah.
Okay. What about for like real estate investors managing multiple properties? Can a virtual staff assistant actually help them with collecting rents, keeping track of their budget?
One of the I used to have a virtual assistant before we started this business who managed a lot of my other production. I had a community that I was managing and all these things, and I checked in with her after we had parted ways, and she had gotten a role with a property manager, and she was the one who was following up with tenants, following up with rent, coordinating different payments and communication. So 100%, you could bring a virtual, anything that can be done virtually. And it's funny, I talked to Claudia, one of our membership of our networking group, and I said, how many people are coming into the bank these days? And she said, none. Like I don't do any it's actually a fraud flag if somebody comes into a bank to open up a business account. And I was like, times have changed. Like a lot, if not everything, can be done virtually. And so as long as you don't need to be in person to receive something, there's a lot that can be done.
Wow. Now, is there a point where a business could get too big for virtual staff and needs to bring in-house? Is Verizon
too big?
Oh. Okay.
Do you ever call customer service for a company? I'm not diminishing it, but I mean, I think anywhere there is business and burden and things that are low-hanging fruit that can be done by somebody at that price point, I don't think it gets too big. And I was joking about Verizon, but anytime you call a lot of call centers, you're often rerouted to the Philippines or another country, and that's who's handling customer service. And I've talked to a lot of them now. I actually ask because I'm in the industry and in the business, but when I get somebody, I say, where are you? Are you in the Philippines? Oh, are you in, Manila? Are you in Cebu City? Are you in this? And they're like, how'd you know that? And well, I know because I'm in the thing, but I say, and I'm fascinated now with the talent because now I get more curious about it. I'm like, wow, like really, really smart, hardworking people.
Now, what's one excuse you hear for why somebody hasn't hired a VA already?
I don't have the time. Well, I think that was one of your questions earlier. Like, I don't have the time to actually map that out. I don't have the time to figure it out. I am not ready for it. I think a lot of those are the things, but the reality is once you implement it, it's like, why wouldn't you be doing this? It's just once the light goes on, it's a game changer. So it's sometimes I hesitate, like I'm slowing down and hesitating because sometimes I'm like, I don't know why somebody wouldn't be doing this because I can see it, right? I've seen it in so many different instances where once you find that rock star and they're in place, and our mutual friend Chris, like, and it's early on, but he's like, she's awesome, and like when a client says that, like, that is what it feels like when you've found a solution to some of the things that you've been looking for the solution for. And that's the feeling. It's not about feeling, but that's the impact that a virtual assistant can have. So sometimes I'm like, I wish more people could get it and see how to put it in and just go through some of it's growing pains. Like anytime you're putting a new system into your business, new person into your business, it's not going to be easy, but on the other side of it, it's incredibly worth it.
So we probably touched on some of this, but if somebody was listening today and they're like, oh my God, this is amazing, I'm ready to hire a virtual assistant right now.
Yep.
What's the first thing you would tell them to do?
Let's have a conversation. Let's map it out. Get crystal clear on who you're looking for and what you want done. If somebody's not clear or they are clear, I usually say, well, what are the top 1, 2, or 3 things you want them to do for you? Like, where are your biggest pain points? But even if you're not clear, through your day, start writing down the stuff that you don't want to be doing. Like, I wish I didn't have to do this. Write that down. I'm spending too much time on this. Write that down. At 7 o'clock, when you didn't get 5 things done because you got pulled into 5 other directions, what are those 5 other directions you got pulled into? Write those down. And then we fine tune that list. We prioritize it. And I say, start with the first one. Like, what's the biggest pain point that could be alleviated? We're going to find that person. Let's get that set up. And then we'll move on to, don't hire 5 at one time. Unless you're really clear and you know exactly what you need, boom, fine, no problem. Let's start with one. Let's alleviate the biggest burden, or at least the biggest return on it. And then we can always add.
That sounds like a good plan. So where can people find you if they want to build out their own team?
Yeah, my name is David Rush. I'm at Access Virtual Staffing. My email is david@Access Virtual Staffing. What?
That'll be under here, right? Yeah. I'm going to give Cole something to do.
Yeah.
Sure he's got the contact
it's on the video right now. David@accessvirtualstaffing.com. Reach out to Richard. I'm sure he could connect us.
Absolutely. Yeah. So now we were talking before earlier, and you touched on it briefly. We have a couple seconds about doing sales training, being in finance, that background. If you were training someone from scratch on sales, what's something you what's a skill that you would want to have them drill into them first?
I think what I've seen and what's been hardest, and there's a whole process around it, but a lot of people don't listen.
I'm sorry, could you say that again? I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, they don't listen, and they don't understand a real good way to ask questions that develop not only rapport, but real understanding of what their pain points are. In sales, we typically hear the first problem or challenge and say, I've got the solution, and we miss a critical step in the process, because oftentimes the first problem that somebody voices is not always the main problem or all the problems, or there's something other than that underneath the surface. So go a little bit further, make it about them and less about you and how great you are and how great your solution is. Let's discover and uncover further, listen really deeply, and at some point, this is what I find too, when you really connect with somebody and ask really good questions and listen well, they're like, I like this person. I may share some different things that I don't share with the other salesperson or relationship manager, and I want to do business with that person. So it's, how do we really make it about the other person rather than coming in attached to the outcome, attached to, I need to sell something.
Right. No, I completely agree with that. And it sort of reminds me of something that happens far too often. Somebody comes to me with a pre-approval from another lender, and they're pre-approved for a certain amount. And the minute I ask them, well, how much do you want to pay a month? And they tell me the amount and the pre-approval based on what they're putting down aren't connected at all, and they have no idea. So yeah, the bank says you could afford X, but that doesn't mean you're comfortable paying X, right? Because really that monthly payment number is more got to do with you than what the bank says.
Yeah.
More often than not, and so it's kind of crazy that people kind of, like you said, they're too busy talking about what they can do and not listening to what the borrower needs.
Yep.
So this has been great. This has been the Loan Doctor Podcast. I'm Rich Brandt, the Loan Doctor. This has been David Rush. And I enjoyed really getting to talk to you and learn more about virtual staffing. I'm sure our listeners got a lot of valuable information, and we appreciate it. And thank you for being in my waiting room.
What's the waiting room? Is this I've heard it now a couple of times, but what's the background on that?
Loan doctor, right? They call me the loan doctor for a couple reasons. One, because my mom always wanted a son who's a doctor. And two, Jewish mom.
Yeah.
And two, getting a loan can sometimes feel like a financial colonoscopy.
Ah,
right?
okay.
All right?
Yeah.
So a doctor has a waiting room.
Yep.
The loan doctor has a waiting room.
Now I got it.
Right.